Okay, grade 9, this is your mixed operations on polynomials review. So the 13 or 15 questions, whatever you had in your review, these are the questions. Follow through. If you want to practice them again, press pause as you get to a question. Try it yourself before you listen to the explanation, and then you can see if you did it right. Question 1 says x times x equals 2x. The answer for this is false. X multiplied by x is the same thing as x squared, because exponents of 2 mean whatever the base is multiplied by itself that many times. So if it was x times x, that would be x cubed, not 3x. 3 multiplied by x is different than x multiplied by itself 3 times. In the second question, you have 4x squared plus 2x equals 6x cubed. The answer for this one is also false, and the reason is that 4x squared, if we were to look at 4x squareds, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 2 x's, and say add those together, what would you get? Well, you can't add them together. That's as much as you get because these are not like terms. X squareds and x's are separate, different terms, so you can't add them if they're not like terms. So adding and subtracting, you can't add them or subtract them if they're not like terms, but multiplying and dividing you can, which is the thing that people kind of forget when they start doing these mixed operations. Question 3 says 2x squared plus 2x times 3x minus 4 will simplify into a binomial. So really, what you have here is you have 3 operations. You have addition, you have multiplication, and you have subtraction. So when there are more than one operation, so if I had 2 plus 3 times 4 take away 5, you would do multiplication first to get 2 plus 12 take away 5. And then now that you have addition subtraction, you would simply add them, and then you would subtract them to get 9 as your answer. In this question, it's just like this type of question, except the only difference is instead of using regular numbers, we're using polynomials or monomials. So the first thing we're going to do is multiply. So when I have my 2x squared, I'm going to add to it the product of 2x times 3x. Now remember, 2x times 3x is the same thing as 2 times x times 3 times x, or 6 times x, or simply 6x squared. So when I simplify this part, it becomes 6x squared minus 4. Now I have adding and subtracting. I can add these because they are like terms. So 2x squareds, which would look like this, plus 6 more of them would be 8x squareds. And minus 4 is a constant. It stays by itself. It does not combine at all with it. So the answer is yes, it is a binomial, and therefore question 3 is true. Question 4, you have the subtraction of polynomials, which is just right out of your adding and subtracting. When you are subtracting polynomials, you are to change it to addition and use the inverse of every term in the polynomial in the bracket. So in this case, change the negative 2x squared to a positive 2x squared, the positive 3x to a negative 3x, and the positive 5 to a negative 5. And then simply gather your like terms. So 4x squared and 2x squared is going to be 6x squared. 3x and negative 3x is no x's. A minus 5 and a minus 5 is a minus 10. Now, is that the same thing as this? Well, remember, if I was to draw this, 6x squareds. So if I think about what this looks like as a drawing, this here is 6x squareds minus 10. If I was to simply take your minus 10 and flip it over here, it is now negative 10 plus 6x squareds. They are the same thing, just in different order. But are they the same value? Yes. So the answer is it true? Yes, it is true. The only difference is they didn't organize them properly in descending degree of terms, but you don't have to. That's just the proper way to do it. Question 5, you have the multiplication of a monomial by a trinomial, which means you're going to have to use distributive property here. And when you use distributive property, 2x times 3x squared will be 6x cubed. 2x times 2x is plus 4x squared. And 2x times a negative 5 is negative 10x. And when we look here, my coefficient here is not the same. So in the 2x times 3x, they added the coefficients instead of multiplying them. So therefore, the answer is false. It should be 6x cubed, not 5x cubed. The rest of the questions I don't have numbered, but you can just follow along. Just add the polynomials, write your solution in descending degree of terms. So here I already have addition. I don't have to change anything. The first thing I do is gather my highest degree terms, which are my x squareds. I have positive 6 there and negative 5 here, which means I have just one I have a coefficient of 1 if you want, but I really don't need to write one coefficient, so it's just 1x squared. My negative 3x and my positive 10x will be a positive 7x when I gather those. Now put lines through just to make sure I covered them. And my positive 4 and negative 4 leave nothing, which means when I add them, I end up with this binomial. The next question says simplify, write your solution in descending degree of terms. So here we have a binomial plus a binomial, take away a trinomial. And again, when you have a takeaway, change it to the inverse of all of the terms in the brackets. And now that you have that, you can gather all your like terms. So I'll start with my x squareds. 4x squared and a 2x squared will be a 6x squared. 2x and a negative 6x will be a negative 4x. A negative 3 and a positive 3 and a negative 3. Well, the negative 3 and the positive 3 make 0. So I end up with this as my solution. The next question, simplify, write your polynomial solution in descending degree of terms. So here we have multiplication plus multiplication. So I'm going to treat these just kind of like brackets. I'm going to multiply them. So when I multiply a monomial by a binomial, we need to use distributive property. 2x times 3x is 6x squared plus 8x. Now remember, the reason why 2x multiplied by 4, for example, equals 8x is because it's the same thing as 2 times x times 4, or rearranging a multiplication string of terms doesn't matter. So therefore, 2x times 4 is 8x. Plus, we would have 3x times 3x, which is 9x squared, minus 15x. Don't pay attention to that. 9x squared and 6x squared is going to be 15x squared. A positive 8x and a negative 15x is going to be a negative 7x. And again, I can't subtract or add those any further because you can't add or subtract terms that aren't like terms. The next question simply gives you a multiplication of a monomial by a trinomial. We need to use distributive property. So you're going to get 100x cubed minus 30x squared plus 20x. So when you multiply that trinomial by that monomial, you end up with this larger trinomial. Here you have multiplication plus a monomial. So when I multiply these two, I get 2 times 3 is 6. X times y is xy. And 6xy plus 2xy, they are like terms because they have the same variables and the same exponents of 1 each. So therefore, I can gather them, and it would be 8xy. The two polynomials at the bottom rectangle add up to be the one at the top. So here we have x squareds, but up top here we have no x squareds, which means this one had to be a negative 2x squared because they canceled out because there's nothing above it that are x squared terms. Here we have a positive 3x, and up here we have a negative 2x. So in order for these two, this had to be a negative 5x because a negative 5x plus 3x would have given me that term above it, which is negative 2x. And this is negative 1, which means this had to be a positive 8 for those two to combine to make a positive 8. Positive 7, excuse me. So your answer is negative 2x squared minus 5x plus 8. Next question, fill in the missing polynomials in the addition pyramid. So I'm going to start first with this one here. I have negative 2x squared here, and I have 5x squared here, which means this had to be a negative 7x squared for those two to combine to get negative 2x squared. This is a 2x, this is an x, which means this had to be a negative x to combine to give me that positive x. This was a 2, this is a 3, which means this had to be a plus 1 up there. Okay? So the first step is to get that. Your second step is to figure out the one above it, so I'm going to do this one right here. So negative 2x squared, there are no 2x squareds here, which means they had to cancel each other out, which means it's a positive 2x squared. There's a positive x here, so that means there had to be a negative x to be canceled out. And there's a positive 3 here, which means there had to be a negative 10 for that to work out to be the what's above it. Okay, so that's your missing box in the second one. And your last one, 5x squared and a negative 3x squared will give you the positive 2x. A positive 2x and a minus 3x will give you the negative x. And a positive 2 and a minus 12 will combine to give you that minus 10. All right, so there's the solution to your addition polynomial pyramid. The next one is a multiplication pyramid. So I'd say, what did I multiply 2x by, what trinomial, to get 10x cubed minus 4x plus 6x. This is really what the question is. So 2x times what gave me this 10x cubed? The answer would be 5x squared. 2x times what gave me negative 4x? It would be a negative 2. And, oh, did I make a mistake somewhere? Oh, I did too, didn't I? Look at that. Oh, interesting. Oh, I meant to have x squared in that second term. There should have been an x squared. Let's pretend the x squared was there. So that should have been a 2x, because 2x times 2x is 4x squared. And 2x times a positive 3 would have given you that. Now, if you didn't have that x squared up there, and you had this one, it would work out to be minus 2 plus 3, which would be the same thing as 2x multiplied by 5x squared plus 1 is really the solution. But either way, it's fine. Simplify using BEDMAS, the last question. So here we have an addition, multiplication, multiplication, a subtraction, a subtraction. So we have 5 operations going on here. The first one I'm going to do is multiplication. So 4x is going to stay there, plus this is going to be 6x minus 8x squared is what that's going to be. Then I'm going to have, well, you know what, I'm going to treat that as a, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to treat it as a minus 2x. So a minus 2x multiplied by a 10x is going to be a minus 20x squared. And a minus 2x multiplied by a positive 2 will be a positive 4x. Then I'm going to have it change it to addition and use the opposite of all of these. So it's going to be plus a negative 10x squared minus 2x plus 1. So now I'm simply going to gather like terms. So I have negative 8x is here, negative 20x is there, x squared is there, that's negative 38x squareds. X squareds are taken care of. Your x's, I have a 4x and a 6x, which is 10x, 14x, 16x, which is a positive 16x. And I only have one constant, it's right here. So the answer is going to be plus 1, and that trinomial is the solution to the last question.